So I'm going to be talking about optimizing Angular, or what I learned from NGCon. Quick shameless self-promotion here. Actually, this will be of value to you. That's my website down here. My name's Shannon. I'm a developer in the Denver area. A few years back, I started a startup in Taiwan. We were doing a school management application using Angular. So I've been using Angular version 2 up pretty much since the start, since the beta. If you want this presentation, because it's got a bunch of notes in it and it's got some links you might want to use, you can get it at this bit.ly URL over here. Otherwise, you can just hit my site and go to presentations. Alright, so that's enough about me. Let's have a look at how we optimize. So I was going to have a slide on why we optimize, and that was pretty much just thank you, Captain Obvious, your work here is done. I don't think I need to convince anyone why we need to optimize. So let's look at how. Now, Angular's kind of got three major things we're going to be covering over here. And the first, and it's kind of in order of complexity. So the first and the easiest thing you want to be doing is using the ahead of time compiler, AOT. The AOT does some tree shaking, as was previously mentioned, and you're going to want to pay attention to your imports, make sure you're importing intelligently. I'll cover that as well in a little bit. The next part, and actually the bulk of this talk, is going to be about lazy loading. So lazy loading has three flavors. If you don't know what lazy loading is, it's basically breaking your app up into smaller chunks or modules and then loading them as needed, or maybe one after the other, or whatever. There's actually quite a lot of, there's some choice here. So your regular lazy loading is just, we break our app up into modules, the user hits the first route, the browser gets the module, renders something on the screen, and then sits and waits. And when they route to another part of your app, it's going to load another module. So that's all good, but then we have preloading. Preloading is great because it's going to load your first module, and then when the client's got something on the screen, it's going to start loading everything else in the background, which is really nice. And then the last version is kind of a hybrid of the two. Custom preloading, you can kind of write your own preload script that can intelligently decide what to preload, or just mark a bunch of stuff off. Preload this, don't do that. And then lastly, we're going to be talking about pre-rendering or server-side rendering. This was Angular Universal, as mentioned. And this is basically rendering certain views in your application to pure HTML and CSS on the server. The client is just pulling that up to start with, so it's really quick, and it's a nice performance bonus. Unfortunately, it's still a bit new. There isn't a lot of documentation on it. I wouldn't want to do a live coding session on that one quite yet, but keep an eye out for it because it's really exciting and pretty cool. So AOT. If you weren't using AOT, you were using JIT, just-in-time compiling. This was if you're just doing ng serve before, that was pretty much it. Now, when we're using JIT, Angular gets compiled inside the browser. So we've got to actually have the compiler in the bundle. So you can imagine that's a chunk of data going to your bundle size. So the bundle is bigger. And there's also a JavaScript overhead. Your JavaScript needs to compile everything. So it's going to be slower. AOT, not so much. You get a smaller bundle because there's no compiler. It's already compiled on the server. You're also having fewer async requests because your bundle is kind of, everything's in one and it knows what it needs and you're done. And lastly, ahead of time compiling also runs through a process called tree shaking. It's going to strip out any code that you've got in your project but not actually using anywhere. And we'll actually see in a minute the comparison of what it does, of the size difference. One of the bonuses of ahead of time compiling is not a performance thing, but it does detect your template errors earlier. You can be doing an ng serve and everything's working, and then you do an ng build, and suddenly everything's, you've got errors everywhere. So it is a nice way to get things out before they hit production. Right, so let's have a quick comparison. This might be a bit small. This might be really small. Okay, the top, the red one there, the left side is just Angular 4 build, but with no AOT flag. So that's outputting a main bundle of 88 kilobytes, which is okay. And on the right, you've got AOT, and your main bundle is down to 85 kilobytes. So woohoo, a whole 3 kilobytes saved there. But if we look at the vendor bundle, that's in the yellow, you guys can't see this, right? Can you actually read it? No. Okay. So the vendor bundle there is. Sorry, Cam. Yeah. Okay.
That may not be helping.
Yeah. All right. So the vendor bundle is actually down to without AOT, it's 2.6 megabytes. If we have a look at the compiled one, it's 503 kilobytes. So that's a massive saving in space and bandwidth that you're putting out there. So let's have a look. How do we AOT? It's pretty easy. It's baked into the compiler you build for production. ng build -- prod. It used to be that you would put the -- AOT flag in there. Now it's done. If you're doing building to production, it's AOT compiling. If you're not and you want to test how AOT is affecting your bundles, you can just use the AOT flags. You say ng build -- AOT like that, and you're good. It's gonna ahead of time compile it, and done. Like that's pretty much it. Except not. There's gonna be more in a second. But for AOT compiling, that's how we do it. I know there may be some people that have more restrictions on how they work. Maybe you're not allowed to install software in your computer because you work for the government, or you're not allowed to use computers at work or something. But if you can't use the CLI, they got you covered. Google has actually released these tools separately, and they can actually load it in as Webpack loaders and process to Webpack. If you want to know more about it, there's a link with the blog on how to do that. Not really in the scope of the talk, but the options are there. Right. So now, we already saw AOT compiling is easy, but there is some stuff we have to do. We're going to stay up to date. As mentioned, they're doing everything they can to get the compiler better, and they're digging through the bundles to see what it's not stripping off. It's just going to keep getting better. So stay up to date. And the other thing is import carefully. The tree shaking is smart, but it's not totally smart. It might miss a few things. What we want to do is not do that. If you don't need the whole of RxJS, just import the parts that you need. And the same thing for something like Angular Material or something like that that's broken up into small pieces. There's also a great talk from ngconf by Stephen Flynn, Best Practice. The link is here in the slide, or you can Google it for YouTube, and he covers this in a bit more depth. Great. Before we talk about lazy loading, though, we're going to have to talk about types of modules. So all modules are essentially just modules, but we can break them up into three types. Feature modules, which are sections of your app that you want to display. So maybe I've got my admin section over here, or it's a part of your app that's kind of a cohesive thing that does something. And then shared modules are for anything like, say, pipes, services, anything that gets imported into other modules. Because remember, when one module has a service or something in it, it's not sharing it with the others. If you import a service into and share it through your app module, it's getting shared to everything, but you might not want that. So we'll have a shared module, bunch of services in there, and those can be imported by other modules down the line. And then lastly, a core module is for anything, any kind of service or something that is only being imported once. You don't want your other modules importing this, you want to provide that from your app module, and it's going to go down dependency injection, and you don't want to actually have someone else import it anywhere else because you're going to get problems. Right, so lazy loading. We know what our modules are. We use our modules to lazy load. What do we lazy load? It's pretty much, if you're given a choice, lazy load everything. There isn't really a bad side to lazy loading something. Your first module is going to get up on the screen. It's going to be lighter than the rest. And then you can go and it always gives you a nice, kind of your code's nice and encapsulated and easy to work with. So when in doubt, lazy load. Default lazy loading is pretty simple. All it is remove any reference of the module that you want to lazy load from your app module, and make sure it's got routing. And then in your routes, we're going to do this in live coding, so you're just, instead of doing path component and then routing to a component, you're going to go path, and then you're going to pass it a string, which is the route to your module file. And that's going to be followed by a hash, and then the name, the class name of the module that exports. And that's it. that's just going to get loaded on demand. Now, a couple of things to keep in mind. Remember that your routing module, your whatever feature module you're routing to there is going to need its own router. There are ways to do this without a router, but it's not really too easy. Don't import your lazy loaded module anywhere else, because then the compiler is going to go, oh, well, I guess you do need this. Let's load it up into the bundle. That defeats the purpose. Right. If you want to know more, and who doesn't, step-by-step improving startup performance, lazy loading in Angular. This was a talk at ngconf, and it covers things very much what I'm covering here in depth. Right, so we've got regular lazy loading. This is preloading, and then we're going to do custom preloading. So preloading is like lazy loading, except instead of loading the first module and waiting around, the moment that first module hits the browser, it's going to start requesting all the other modules that it's got. And that's the same thing in your routes, but you're going to have to import preload all modules from Angular router, and then you're going to pass this little config object in here where you do your router module.forRoot. You pass your app routes in, and you're going to tell it preloading strategy is preload all modules. One thing to keep in mind, when you are using preloading, any routes that you have protected with can load are not going to get preloaded. It's a feature, it's intended to be that way, it's not a bug. If you want to do that, if you want to preload something, a protected route, use can activate instead. There's a link to the documentation if you want to see why that's like that. And then lastly, we have custom preloading. So same deal as before, except now you get to define which modules are preloaded and which aren't. So you're gonna make yourself a preload strategy, a script, and that is going to import preloading strategy from the router. And you're going to implement that. You're going to extend that, and you're going to put. It's going to have one method in it, preload, and that takes a route and a function, which is load the module. The router is going to go through each route that you've got, and it's going to pass those in. It's going to compare, and it's actually going to have a piece of data that it's going to check. And your script is either going to return the load function, at which point the router is going to go ahead and load it, or it's going to return null, an observable null, and it's not going to load it. So how do we tell it which ones? In our route data, we can add this little data attribute over here, and whatever goes in here, it's up to you. Angular doesn't really care because you need to evaluate this back in your script. So you'll put data, preload true, preload false, you can put whatever you want in here as long as you have a way of evaluating it over here. And that is preloading. Don't forget to add to the router module before you root. Instead of the preload all strategy, you're going to put your own preload strategy in there. That's it. So that's preloading. The last one we're getting to, pre-rendering, is the one I mentioned. It used to be Angular Universal. It's now being made into a first-class part of Angular, or part of the core. Basically, it lets us pre-render a part of Angular into HTML and CSS on the server. So, as you can imagine, it's getting quick, it's going to load quickly, and it's got a couple of other advantages to it. Now, it can also pre-render partial pages. So, you can imagine good candidates for this would be something non-interactive, like a blog or something like that, which is flat. But if you have a mix, you have something where you've got a fairly static page and then one section of it is interactive, it can pre-render the static part and then have like a loading section on that until the app is bootstrapped up behind it, because that's the point. Once this gets up, your app's going to be bootstrapping behind it. So it does work well with static content, like I said, a blog, any page like that. It doesn't work well with dynamic or interactive content. Why do you want to pre-render? It's fast. Obviously, you're loading HTML and CSS. There's no compilation or anything like that. No parsing. It's scrapable. If generally Google's not going to have a problem with this, or Facebook, but there might be scrapers out there that are struggling with scraping JavaScript. It'll make it easier. It's also crawlable, more easily crawlable. Okay, so your pre-rendering lifestyle, it's actually going to follow 4 stages when you pre-render. The first one is you're going to render it on the server, and it's going to sit there waiting to be requested. Your client's going to request it, and they're going to get a chunk of HTML and CSS back, so it's going to be served to them. Now, once they've got that, the rest of your app is going to start bootstrapping up behind it. So they've already got this quick load HTML and CSS on the screen. The rest of your app is loading, bootstrapping, and the moment it's finished loading and bootstrapping, it seamlessly swaps with the pre-rendered template. There may be a problem. You may recognize a problem here. What if I've got something where there's some kind of user interaction? Maybe there's an input box, and the user starts typing something, and now it gets swapped. Well, the last cycle on the life cycle is replay. It actually replays everything the user has done back into the app after it's bootstrapped, so you can handle anything that the user has done. Okay, so like I said, not really out yet, but keep an eye on it because it's going to be pretty cool. And that is it for my blitzed optimizing Angular. There's a resources page on here if you want anything. This first one here is the Narwhal blog. It's got some good articles on lazy loading and modules. This is my ngconf list that Adam shared, and some documentation, some of the talks from ngconf you might want to watch. And then this over here is the source map explorer. If you want to see what's actually taking up space inside your bundle after you've generated, you can install the source map explorer, fire up a build, and point the source map explorer at one of your bundle files, and you can actually, you'll get it up in a web page, that in a browser page, and you can actually drill down and look at where your space is going. And that is it. Would anybody like to ask a question before I get to my code? Yes?
One of the things I'm doing, and if this question is something we should do offline, don't hesitate to answer that way. But I think maybe others have the same problem. I have reports that I want to be visible to the user and to have interaction in them, such as highlight everything that's changed in the last 24 hours or something like that. But I also want to be able to deliver those by email. Okay. One of the problems I end up with is two versions of the truth. If I put a button and then you create it later, the data may have changed between what you're looking at. So then I got the overhead of keeping the data current out online.
Okay.
What I'd really rather do is have the two synced. Would there be a way for me to put Angular Universal or pre-rendering in an API and actually use Angular behind the scenes?
That is kind of outside the scope of this, because like I said, with Angular, it actually doesn't sound like something Angular Universal would really be good for, because in the talk at ngconf, they actually used the example of a bank statement. And he's saying you don't want to use like pre-rendering on a bank statement, because that data is going to change. So you're constantly going to be pre-rendering. So in the case of your report, every time somebody else changes that report or anything, it's going to have to be pre-rendered again. But in that situation, I mean, regular Angular just with an observable sitting there, sockets that are just updating it. So
But my problem is that I need to embed this in an email.
Oh.
And I can embed static HTML and CSS, but I can't embed Angular and JavaScript.
That, from what I can tell.
Michael, I think what you're talking about is you're talking about point-in-time reporting.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yes.
at this exact point, this is what I want to show. I don't really think that's an Angular Universal issue, because that's just server-side rendering at the time that you're asking for it to be rendered.
Right, I can write this in C# or in JavaScript on the server,
So
but it would be nice to have Angular to do the formatting and everything.
You absolutely can. I think what you're looking at is point-of-time reporting, which looks like one of the things that well, it's the idea of saying, hey, at this point in time, what was my data like? And so it's really being able to then compare your data, saying, I want all this data between these ranges up until this point. It's almost, if you will, it's almost like you think about like a redux pattern, that we're able to time machine, we're able to time machine back to what it was.
My issue is not the data getting out of sync. My issue is, how can I have the power of Angular to render my report and then get it back in static HTML
I'll
and
put it in
CSS
static HTML.
that I can embed in an email? You see? 'Cause-
Okay, well that's not how I understood the question initially.
Yeah.
We're talking about
Right.
that they're out of sync, and we're talking about out of sync, then we're talking point in time. If we're talking
That's
about
not my. I'll.
let's pull it on the side.
Yeah, we could really talk about it. So yeah, any others?
I have
Yeah.
another question, but to note that for for the ahead of time compilation, it will reduce your project, but it might not, depends on your project size. If you really have a small project, the size can actually increase even if you expect it to be smaller because, well, one of the reasons it will have to add the code for all the metadata and other stuff. So if you don't have much code to minimize, your code will become bigger. So.
Yeah, it's definitely something to keep in mind.
I will say on the lazy loading aspect, one thing that they did say at NGConf was you have to really keep your parent-child relationship in sync with your dependencies. So you want to be very linear with it. As soon as if you're trying to lazy load something that also needs a dependency over here and needs a dependency over here, the whole thing can break and become totally messy.
Yeah.
And there are ways of managing that, but for the most part, you've got to be very disciplined with that flow when you're lazy loading these children.
Yeah, if you've got a shared module that's being imported by every single other module in your app, it's going to be spaghetti. So I mean, you would then want to look at, for example, if we've got time, I was going to look at refactoring Bill's app to use lazy loading. And one of the things that's got in there is a service. And you could go, well, great, okay, we'll take the service and we put it in a core module, and then that'll just get injected back into that, but nothing else needs it. Your app module doesn't need it. So, or you could go put it in a shared module, and then everything else can use it. But if nothing else is using it, just dump it right in the module. So yeah, better look at your relationships and just make the decision. Okay, shall we move on to some live code? Do we have time? Do we have time? Good. Okay. All right. I apologize. This is my regular computer. It's running Linux. I've got all my keybinds over here. I'm blind over here. So I need to get. Let's see. This is all tab.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So what we're actually gonna look at Bill's app over here. You got no attachment to this, right?
Nope, you can destroy it.
All right. So the first thing we want to do is, currently we're loading everything in one bundle, and there isn't a router in here either. So the first thing we're going to want to do is stop it compiling. And okay, we're going to want to generate our module. Now, usually I would generate. I like to put all my feature modules under one folder, and then pour in a different one, and so on. So I'm going to say ng generate a module, and we're going to generate. This isn't the root, right? Yes. Okay. ng generate module, and we're going to give it a route. We're going to say shared. I hate caps lock. Every time I'm looking, shared modules, and we'll call this one bid. And I'm going to want routing because we can't do lazy loading without it. Okay, and we're going to go ahead and generate that. Now that's just going to get created. What I'm going to want to do is, I'm actually going to go in there, shared modules, and bid. I'm going to go into that. Now if I generate a component or anything, it's going to get added to this module. So normally I'm just going to go, I've got all this code in the bid component. I'm just going to generate one and then overwrite that, because that way it sets the whole framework up for me. So we'll say it's ng generate a component. We'll call this one bid, and that should be that. I should probably say no testing, because who cares about testing? But yeah, there we go. I'm kidding. Testing is fantastic. Okay, so we've got that up. Now we want to go in, and here's his original. He's got his app bid with a component. Here's our shared modules. Here's our bid, and this is our bid component. So what we're going to do is we're just going to drag this over, and it's going to squeal because we're overwriting stuff. No, we didn't, because we dragged it in. Yes, I want to replace all of these guys. Okay, so that's in there. It's been taken out. Now the first thing.
Got an error.
We replace folders contained in A. Okay, let's just do, let's move it up to shared modules.
I've got more files.
Yeah, it's not gonna.
Pull it back out to app and start over.
Yeah.
Not the folder.
Well,
Let's check. This is the component. Yeah. Okay. We'll move that
Move
right
that
to
to
app. Wow. File system difficulties. Okay, that shouldn't be so hard. Okay, so that's our component. We actually want to put it into bid over there. Yes, I want to replace that. Okay. So now we've got our bid in there. Got our HTML, CSS. Okay. Except this guy does not have the service that it needed. So let's pull our service out. And we don't need the spec. Because like I said, who cares about text? And we'll move this over. Yeah, the service is in there. I mean, you would usually put the service into bid. What I like to do with most modules, with if they are sharing services and stuff like that, is actually re-export it from the module. That way everything is kind of nicely in one place. So let's have a look. And now the service is going to have to be, okay, so let's import, let's bid, service, bid, there we go. And we want to make sure that it gets provided. And bid service. Okay, we're good there. Another thing, I actually refactored this before the thing so that I didn't do something really stupid on here. And I forgot that this actually needs the forms module. So we're actually going to go here, app module, we're going to take forms, we're going to take these guys. Oops. What is your auto? On Mac it's control / I mean on here it's control /. Take bid component out. We're going to take this bid service out of providers. It's no longer there. And the bid service is gone. Here we're going to need forms module. And we're going to copy that to bid module. It's functional.
Is it going to complain about that comma at the end of the list, right before the line
Yes,
commented
it's
out?
actually going to complain that forms module has been taken out here. So we'll just do that.
But, I mean, the comma right above the commented line.
No, it doesn't complain.
It's okay.
It's not good, but it's say Control S. Okay. No, it's not.
Oh, I'm wondering that.
Command S. Okay, Mac.
there's actually a standard
Alright.
spec for
No, that's not it.
function calls too.
There we go. Okay.
I don't know if it would be bad.
You'll need to save that.
What's that?
Need to save the bid module.
Yeah. I gotta import forms, so let me import forms module from Angular forms. Like yeah. And we want to
It should make
just get some declared.
much easier. One other connection,
Forms module. Okay. All right, so we've got our module. Let's go have a look at routing. So our routing over here, we're going to make a path. Say, make it the default path. And we're going to say we're going to route to a component, and that's going to be our bid component, which we need to import. Bid. good. Okay, and we should probably put path match full in there. Okay, save that. All right, so we're good on routing. Let's go have a quick look at our, one of the things we're gonna have to do here in the HTML. You take this out. I'm just gonna put the router in here. Router object. Yes. Okay, what I didn't do was actually generate routes for this. So what I could do, quick way, if we have time, is I'll just generate another, instead of typing it all out, I'll generate another one real quick. Let's see. What do we mean, app? Sorry, that's a faster way of doing this. So I'm going to say ng new, I'll call it tempo, and I definitely want routing, and we'll say skip install. So that should go quicker. Okay. And is cat on here? Command C, Control C, Control C. This
Cat will work. It'll just
cat does work? Okay, great. So let's say cat source.
TACD into?
Yeah, sorry. Cat source app app routing. Okay, so we'll take that.
If you pipe into PB copy, it'll put it directly into the clipboard.
Oh, I've been out Linuxed.
Well, not necessarily. I don't know how to do it in non-OS X environment.
Okay. What we do have to do here is create a new app-routing.module.ts. That should work, and yeah. Save that. And let's do a cat source app. This is going to be app.module. What we're going to get from here is routing. Actually, what we'll just do is take the whole thing. Because that's got our routing, it's got everything in it. Okay, copy that. App module. Select all, paste. I hope I didn't do something really stupid here, but save that. Okay, and now, for the big one, in our app routing module, we want to set up our routes. So what we can do here is say load children. And this is going to point to our module. So that's going to be shared modules. Bid, and this will be bid dot. We bid.module. We're going to leave the TS off. We're going to put a hash in there, and we're going to say bid module, and hope that is the correct name. And we're going to save that. And you just check that. Bid module. Export bid module. There we go. Okay, let's see if this serves without error. So what was it called?
BrieBug dash airline.
That one?
That was it's actually Meetup.
Okay.
It's
That one, Meetup app?
Meetup app, that's the one that you were coding.
Okay. And let's try ng-serve and see what blows up here. If I did this first time right, I'll be fairly happy. Okay, we got an error there. Let's see, shared bed cannot find. What is that? Can't find
It's
module bed
expecting the
service.
service to be
Okay.
one directory above.
Yeah. Alright, so let's go in here. Bed module. It's finding the bid service. The component. Oh, there we go. Okay. Okay, we're compiled. Yay, but if we look at how do you open the console in this, it's Control-Shift-J.
It'll be Command Alt Y.
Command Alt I. Okay. Look at our console and we look at sources. We can see this 0.chunk over here. And that's actually our module that is loading separately. So you'll be able to see when you start factoring your app out into separate modules, they'll be loaded as a number.chunk. And you can then check, if you're using preloading, did it preload? And you can go in there and check which chunk loaded and so on. And that's it for the lab code. Does anyone have any questions on that?